It was a night like no other. The street was eerily quiet, shrouded in an unsettling stillness. The only sound was the soft crunch of my footsteps on the gravel road. A faint mist hung in the air, swirling under the dim glow of the streetlights. I glanced around, clutching my jacket tighter as the cold wind bit at my skin. There wasn't a single soul in sight. Not a car, not a passerby. Just me and the vast emptiness of the night. For some reason, I couldn't shake the feeling that the silence wasn't natural. It was heavy, almost suffocating, as if the darkness itself was watching me. But I brushed it off. It's just my imagination, I thought. Still, my heart quickened as I quickened my pace, eager to reach home. Little did I know, the night had other plans. As I walked, the sound of my footsteps echoed down the empty street. But then, something strange happened. I heard another set of footsteps. They weren't loud, just faint enough to make me doubt my own ears. I stopped in my tracks. The sound stopped too. I turned around quickly, scanning the shadows behind me. Nothing. The street was as empty as before, with only the dim lights and swirling mist for company. I let out a nervous chuckle. It's nothing, just the sound bouncing off the walls, I told myself. Yet, as I began to walk again, the faint footsteps returned. This time, they matched mine perfectly. My breath hitched. I spun around once more, my eyes darting to every corner. Still nothing. But that eerie sensation of being watched clung to me like a cold, damp cloak. The silence around me grew heavier, almost as if the night itself was holding its breath. I shook my head, trying to shake off the fear creeping into my chest. Get a grip, I muttered under my breath. But deep down, I knew this wasn't just my imagination. Something or someone was there. I kept walking, my pace quicker now, the uneasy feeling gnawing at me. Then, I saw it. At the far end of the street, under the flickering light of a street lamp, stood a figure. It was motionless, shrouded in shadow, its face obscured by the darkness. My heart stopped for a moment. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaky and uncertain. The figure didn't respond. It didn't move. It just stood there like a statue carved out of the night itself. I took a hesitant step forward, squinting to get a better look. Was it a man? A woman? I couldn't tell. The way it stood there so unnervingly still sent a chill racing down my spine. I stopped moving, unsure of what to do. My instincts screamed at me to turn around and leave. But my curiosity held me in place. The figure tilted its head slightly, almost as if acknowledging me. That's when I realized something even more unsettling. It wasn't just standing there. It was watching me. My breath quickened as I forced myself to keep walking, pretending I hadn't noticed the figure. But with every step I took, I felt its presence growing stronger, like an invisible weight pressing down on me. Then, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps behind me. They were slow, deliberate, and far too close. I didn't dare turn around. My heart pounded in my chest as I picked up my pace. The footsteps behind me matched my rhythm, growing louder and closer. The streetlights above flickered, casting distorted shadows on the ground. One of them wasn't mine, Rendu. I couldn't take it anymore. I whipped around, my eyes scanning the empty street. The figure was gone. Nothing but the thick mist and the dull hum of distant wind surrounded me. For a moment, I felt relief, thinking I had imagined it all. But as I turned back to continue walking, my blood ran cold. There it was, standing just a few feet ahead of me now, its dark silhouette clearer than before. It didn't move, but I could feel the weight of its gaze piercing through me, freezing me in place. Something was very, very wrong. I couldn't breathe. My legs felt rooted to the ground as the figure slowly began to move toward me. Its steps were unnaturally slow, almost like it was savoring the fear radiating off me. "Stay back," I yelled, my voice cracking. But the figure didn't stop. Its shadowed form seemed to ripple in the dim light, as though it wasn't entirely human. I turned and ran as fast as I could, my heart hammering against my ribs. The cold night air burned in my lungs, but I didn't dare look back. The sound of footsteps followed, growing faster, louder. It was chasing me. No matter how far I ran, the street stretched endlessly ahead of me. The same flickering lights and empty silence looping like a twisted dream. I stumbled, nearly falling, but forced myself to keep going. Finally, I saw an alleyway and darted into it, pressing my back against the cold brick wall. My chest heaved as I tried to stay quiet, listening intently. The footsteps stopped. For a brief, terrifying moment, there was only silence. Then, out of the shadows, the figure emerged at the entrance of the alley, its face still obscured. It was closer than ever now. It was a late, quiet night, around 11 p.m. I was walking home alone after a long day. The city, usually bustling with life, had turned eerily silent. The streetlights flickered faintly, casting long, wavering shadows on the empty roads. The air felt heavy, like something unseen was pressing down on me. At first, I thought it was just my imagination playing tricks on me. But then, I heard it. A faint sound of footsteps, steady and deliberate, coming from behind. I glanced over my shoulder, but there was nothing. Or was there? A chill ran down my spine, but I shook it off and kept walking, quickening my pace slightly. The footsteps seemed to mimic mine, growing louder and closer. At that moment, I paused. What would you do if you felt someone or something was following you? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to subscribe for more chilling tales. I convinced myself it was nothing. Maybe someone else was just walking in the same direction. But deep inside, I felt it. That inexplicable sense that I was no longer alone. The footsteps didn't stop. If anything, they grew louder and more deliberate, matching my pace perfectly. I tried to stay calm, convincing myself that it was probably just someone heading in the same direction. But deep down, I knew something wasn't right. When I turned the corner onto a dimly lit street, I glanced back again. That's when I saw him, a man, wearing a long tattered coat and a hood that hid most of his face. He was walking just far enough to make it seem coincidental, but his presence felt wrong. I picked up my pace, hoping he would pass or turn in another direction, but no. His footsteps mirrored mine. When I walked faster, so did he. When I slowed, he slowed too. Then, as I crossed the street, I heard him whisper something, soft, almost unintelligible, carried by the night breeze. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was chilling. Would you keep walking or confront him? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe if this story is sending shivers down your spine. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just paranoia, but each step I took felt heavier, as though the air itself was thickening around me. And behind me, his presence loomed, closer than before. I couldn't ignore it any longer, the feeling that I was being hunted. I decided to stop pretending everything was fine. I turned around, fully expecting to see him still at a distance. But no. He was standing only a few feet away, directly behind me. My heart slammed in my chest. He wasn't just following me anymore. He was right there, just standing, staring at me with those dark, unblinking eyes. I couldn't see much of his face beneath the hood, but the little I could see sent a chill running through my entire body. There was no warmth in his gaze, no human connection, just emptiness. "Can I help you?" I managed to ask, trying to sound braver than I felt. My voice trembled slightly, betraying my fear. He didn't respond at first. Then, in a voice that felt too calm for the situation, he said, "You don't know it yet, but tonight is the end of your story." I froze. The words hit me like a slap. It was as if time itself stopped for a moment. His tone was so matter-of-fact, so final. I took a step back, but he didn't move. Instead, his head tilted slightly, as if he was studying me. And then, that chilling smile appeared beneath the hood. "What do you think is going on here? What would you do next? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you're still with me, don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what happens next." Double asterisk. I didn't know how to respond. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but my legs felt frozen, as though the ground beneath me had turned to stone. Panic surged through me like a jolt of electricity. Without thinking, I turned and started running. My heart pounded in my chest, and the sound of my breath was deafening. But no matter how fast I ran, I could feel him just behind me, his presence hovering like a shadow. I glanced over my shoulder once, only to see that he wasn't following me in the way I expected. He wasn't running. He was walking, slowly, almost leisurely. But it didn't matter. The distance between us never increased. I sprinted down the narrow alleyways, hoping to lose him in the maze of the city. My footsteps echoed off the walls, but every turn I took, every corner I rounded, felt like the same street again and again. The city had somehow transformed into a labyrinth, one that I couldn't escape from. I was losing my mind, running in circles, but he was still there, always just behind me, as if the world itself was bent on keeping us together. Suddenly, I saw something ahead. A bus stop dimly lit by a flickering light. I headed toward it, hoping to find some kind of safety, some way to regroup. But as I reached the bus stop, I saw him again, standing, waiting. The cold, distant smile crept back onto his face as he stared at me. I froze. It was like he had been waiting for me all along, like this was where the chase was always meant to end. I stood there, heart racing, unable to move as the man slowly approached me. His smile never wavered, and I could feel my knees weaken beneath me. The air was thick with an unnatural cold, and the sounds of the city seemed to fade away entirely. It was just me and him in that moment of silence, like the world had completely disappeared. "You've reached the end," he said softly, his voice smooth but filled with an unsettling finality. He stepped closer, and I instinctively took a step back, but there was nowhere to go. The bus stop was deserted, the streets empty. Just as he was about to reach out to me, something strange happened. Everything went dark, my vision blurred, and I felt my body give way as if the ground had slipped out from under me. I collapsed to the pavement, unconscious. When I awoke, I was lying on the steps of my own front porch. The night had returned to its quiet, still state, and the streetlights flickered as they always did. I blinked in confusion, trying to make sense of what had just happened. Was it a dream? A nightmare? But when I looked down, there was something in my hand, an old, rusty pocket watch. Its hands were frozen, at exactly 12 a.m., and there was an engraving on the back that read, "Time's up." I don't know what happened that night, but I know this. The man, or whatever he was real. And now, every time I look at that watch, I wonder, was I meant to survive, or was I just a part of something far darker? The unsettling feeling lingers, and the question remains. What if the time hasn't truly run out yet?